What's up, everyone? And surprise, here we are for a second instalment of the Just an Insight podcast this week. This is a little bit of a special show as it coincides with the release of our guest's latest EP. But first, let's get the pleasantries out of the way. My name is Tim Birkbeck. I am a writer. I am a lover of music, films and wrestling. But most importantly of all, I am your body and vehicle through this podcast. Before we get onto the show itself, obviously today's a special day for another reason, because all around the UK, people are heading to the polls to vote in the general election. Now, I'm not here to kind of push my political views on people. That's not what this podcast is about whatsoever. But I do believe in people exercising their right to vote. So if you're registered to vote, please go out and cast a vote. Whether you want to vote for whoever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me. But I just think we've got this privilege to decide who runs our country, who represents us. And with the political climate as it is at the moment, I think there's no time like the present. Even if it's the first time you ever vote, I think this is kind of a really important time to do so. But yeah, enough of me kind of rambling on about my week and about politics, because nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants to hear who the guest on this week's show is. So this special episode with Human Future is brought to you in association with alreadyheard.com. Already Heard is an alternative music website which brings you the latest news, reviews and features from punk, pop punk, metal to anything you can think of in the alternative music scene, from awesome writers such as myself. Just throwing it out there. You can check out all the work, including mine, over at alreadyheard.com, and they're on all the various different social media platforms. As mentioned then, our guest this week is Human Future, and I was joined by Stephen Treepack of the band. Sorry, Stephen, if I've pronounced your surname wrong. I hope I haven't, but yeah, of the band Human Future. The reason we're doing this show kind of on this specific date is because today is also the release of the band's new EP, Flat Earth Blues, which obviously Stephen talks about in the little chat. He talks about how the EP is probably the most collaborative work that they've done as a band, and how obviously the record is out on Truth Seeker Music, which Stephen, as well as Alex and Philip, who are also in the band, are all part of. So he kind of mentions them being the New World Order, which, if you kind of look at things, makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, please sit back, enjoy the chat that I have with Stephen, and I will see you on the other side. So, on this week's Just an Insight podcast, I am joined by self-proclaimed screamy man, synth boy, and third guitarist of Human Future, Stephen Treepack. How are you doing, Stephen?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No. Thanks for joining me. Basically, what we like to do with the Just an Insight podcast is kind of tear things straight back to how the band begun, and kind of develop from there. Obviously, it's called Just an Insight. So if you can give us an insight into the history of Human Future.
Well, I'll give you an interesting, detailed story of the past of the Human Future. Simply put, I'm terrible at remembering the details of the band so well, because it's frankly, we've been about for a bit and we are a lethargic bunch. We started about probably like 6 or 7 years ago now. I'm probably wrong on those dates. It was after we went to see a Touche Amore gig in Brighton, and I was with the fellow guy who founded it, Alex Leet, who is also of Truth Seeker Music, and we just attended the gig, and the guy who we went with was just like, yeah, you know what, we should start a band, they're well good. I remember feeling like I only met Alex a few times, so it was a case of a little nervous, but I was just like, yeah, I can see the parallels between the music I was from and the sort of things I wanted to do, and bands like Touche Amore. I think Throats were playing as well, so that was another thing where I was like, oh, this is intense. I really like the live thing of hardcore. So that's where I got into hardcore, and it blossomed from there. We originally, the working title for the band before the demo came out was Diagnosis Murder.
Nice.
I wasn't too keen on that. Yeah, that was Alex and Rob, who was the original bassist and the mate who essentially brought us together originally. He suggested that, and I'm that little bit too pretentious to kind of like be comfortable sitting on a joke band name.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
No. And that's where I kind of took the role as, I guess, the band leader for the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Like it was essentially a case of I knew I was already in other bands and I was trying to do projects, and they just went nowhere. And I guess it was arguably a little bit of ego of like, oh, I can do this. I know I can do a band. I know I can write music. I've written countless albums that half of them are shite, but like just on power tab, just writing music, just kind of as an Asperger's teen, just kind of just spending many years reclusively working on music. I knew I could do it, so formed the band with Alex. We created the demo together, and when we recorded the demo, that's when the band actually started coming together. It was originally started as a bedroom project, really. Like, we realised that it was unlikely to ever get particularly popular, and it's just because we were into like niche music, and we realised that what we were going to kind of come out with, just, we weren't interested in, I guess, paying for promotion and stuff like that. So it was also another thing is, again, I've already stated Asperger's youth, and Alex wasn't keen on doing live shows, so we were just expecting it to remain in the bedroom really and just kind of do what we do, and there was a certain point when we'd written the demo, I started writing the debut album, Spectrum, and at a certain point in that process, Alex was just like, you do realise this is actually like, I really like this, like this is, I reckon this has got potential to go somewhere, why don't we actually like form a band? It was at that point I essentially remembered that Philip, our lead guitarist, he was a guy who I'd recorded at West Kent College when I did a music production course, and he was on the performance course, and there's a point where we crossed over where the performance course would form bands. They would then like record either their original material or cover songs that the production course could then like use to learn how to work in a studio and all that business. That's where I met Phil. I was just immediately blown away by him. He was in a band called Ghost in Mirrors. They were kind of like a Tool-ish band, with elements of Portishead, Partos. I think there's some Scandinavian sort of prog band, and like with a four-piece band, like a female singer. Like, so she was also playing synth and doing kind of percussive things. It was just like a really interesting thing to see in the studio play out. Whereas like other bands were just doing straight up cover songs, they were doing their own inspired material. So I remembered back to him, and I was just like, oh, I really want to get him involved, because I remember talking to him about a bit about metal, a bit about the band Akakoka. At the time he seemed to like them, now he hates them. Basically, that's one thing you'll learn with me if you ever pay attention. I like Akakoka. Do you know who Akakoka are?
Yeah, they're not a band to like, to be honest.
Ave Reggae Hail Satan. Yes, come on. Yeah, no, I guess it's part of the Catholic upbringing. I was a little interested in Akakoka. But yes, so I just remembered about Phil, and I was just like, oh, we need to get onto Phil. And this, I haven't even mentioned, there have been like 3 or 4 bassists in the band. Now, originally it was Rob, who left to go to uni and focus on like real life stuff. We then had my friend called Ricky Simmons, who was the bassist on the demo, who essentially was just like, he was in the band that I was in before, and I was just like, I know I can do this. I know I can do a band. And then he kind of realised like, oh wait, hang on, Steve's actually doing something. He's like, can I play bass? At that point, yeah, he was the bassist. After that, he left because he decided, yeah, I've got to go back to uni, college, and do all these things. So we were I already knew the bassist because I met him at the same time I met Phil. Luke Booth was in the band Ghosts and Mirrors with Phil, and it kind of just naturally came about that I figured he wouldn't be interested in the music at first. I just assumed he might. I was aware he was a bit more. He's a bit of a serious guy. Like, like for a long time wondered if he actually even liked me at all, and it's quite possible that he didn't like me for a long period. But yeah, like I just didn't think he would appreciate it. Turns out he did, and just naturally came about a process of him joining the band as the third bassist, and now he's buggered off to Canada. Not going into bits, but that was a sad time. Oh well. But I haven't even mentioned the vocalist. Will, our vocalist, he came about in the demo period, but he was actually originally like the second guitarist. So he realised, he was second guitarist until he realised he wasn't actually good enough. He was just like, do you mind if I try out for vocals instead? I was just like, I've already got... I was auditioning someone and I turned them down because I really liked Will. So, yeah, it was a case of Will was pushed to the forefront at vocals.
Well, I think this... Oh, sorry, go on.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I kind of got in a similar situation in the band that I'm in. So they've been a band for a very long time. Their original vocalist left because he had a kid. And then they got a new vocalist, and he had to leave because he got deported back to Australia. Yeah, long story. But so then, like literally, they had a show booked, ironically, in Brighton. Didn't have a vocalist. They were going to try and split it between one of their guitarists and their bassist, but they realised because of the riffs they were writing, they couldn't concentrate on doing the riffs and the vocals.
It's so hard playing guitar and vocals.
So I was sort of like, well, I've done it sporadically. I can give it a go, and
Good boy.
And it's just kind of stuck. And yeah, but I can totally relate to that being pushed to the forefront, sort of.
He pushed himself to the forefront in a way, but it worked out. I remember I had to, the room I'm currently in. This is where the magic happens. I'm currently, you can see me, and I'm recording onto the computer I demo Human Future stuff with.
Okay.
And that's the boy I recorded the guitars with for the new release. But Will was in this room shouting his bloody head off, to the demo. We recorded the demo, and Will was just like, can I, try recording to the demo sort of thing? And she's like, yeah, go on. I had to leave, because it was so strange seeing a guy. He's not like a complete wimp. I don't want to make out that, but he's a timid guy, and when you just hear him going, Aah! It's just I was incredulous. Oh my god, what's he doing? And I was just bursting. I sounded like Ricky Gervais on his podcast where I'm like, and I had to go upstairs and excuse myself, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, you've kind of touched upon it a little bit, but obviously the music that you guys kind of write and release and everything is obviously it's changed and gone with different sort of influences. And I think from my perspective, listening to you guys, there's loads of different influences kind of in there. And obviously, I think you mentioning kind of it started all at a Touche Amore show, that influence is clearly there. But there's obviously other things as well. So kind of, is it a case of everyone brings their own influences into it and then that becomes Human Future? Or is there like a common thread?
The common thread originally was myself and Alex, I guess, because we were the original two. And for the demo, I wrote most of the music and most of the lyrics, and Alex then kind of added in bits, and I would structure his ideas around mine or just develop, or in case of some of the lyrics, there'd be grammatical errors, and I'm a pedant. So I'd be like, okay, that is actually that. Boom, there we go. And for the demo, that was the process. For the album, it's essentially, I like that Human Future is a band about, we focus on specific themes on each release. And sometimes it's a bit like the demo is a bit more vague, but originally it was called First World Issues, First World Problems. And it's essentially just looking at our lives and the country around us and just our experiences and just picking a few things that just resonated with us, I guess. Anachronism is very much, we've got a weird chronology. The demo was written and Spectrum was started writing before it was finished, and the demo was relatively collaborative. The album, I wrote it before the band was formed, essentially.
Brilliant.
it's essentially a concept album about me realizing as an adult, oh, I think I might be autistic, and like a lot of things kind of gather up. And if you follow the album, like the tracks, it's essentially somewhat of a, again, it's not a storyline arc as such, but it's just select moments that I wrote about in that experience, and the final song itself is meant to be representative of the process of writing an album. It's a bit of a meta track, I guess. Like, again, here's the pretentious part coming out, but it's essentially about the process of writing that album. And you can hear it in a way that, like, there's a part in the song where it literally is, it comes right down, and it's like the myth of Sisyphus. Again, here we go, getting pretentious. It is literally ascending the peak. You're climbing up the mountain, pushing the boulder up the hill. It reaches the top, which is like the end of the guitars and the trumpets and stuff like that. And then you come back rolling down with the dissonant synths literally going into, they're just clipping like mad. It's meant to be symbolic of something. And yeah, that's just how I did that album. What we did, though, was we released Anachronism, the EP, before that, which was written after Spectrum. Headfuck. Anachronism was essentially a point to, because Luke and Phil had been introduced into the band, and I was just like, right, I've got an album, essentially. And they were a bit, I didn't realise it quite at first, because I tried to explain as clearly as possible what my intent was, and they were wanting it to be more collaborative. So there's a period where I didn't quite realise, but yeah, they were a bit like, well, I want to write some bits.
Yeah. No, I can get that.
Of course, yeah. Again, I've fortunately grown as a person a little bit. Like, I realised I was being very insular, and I was not able to see it beyond the art. And they're my friends. I want them to be involved. So it did become a lot more collaborative, especially in the recording of the thing. Like, things naturally change over time because it was written onto PowerTab, and it just, each musician will interpret a tab in their own way. Like, the amount of times where, like, I've written it, say you can write a song and it's a very definite thing on the tab, and then you hear like about 5 different mates trying to attempt playing that, and they all play it in their own different way. So it's kind of that natural progression of how they interpret what I've written and their own ideas. Like, I didn't write any solos. All the solos are Phil's. Like, the bass solo that Luke does on one of the tracks, that's his. And I've got my friend AJ from Necro Deathmort, who I'm referencing right now, you can't see. He collaborated on the track Misery Drone. He created the synth parts, which are like throughout the track, which are essentially just drones. Funnily enough, Misery Drone. Hey.
But yes,
Anachronism was written after Spectrum, came out before, so that it was a case of we could all collaborate and actually write something together, rather than it just being a case of you do what I say sort of thing. And this new release that we are going to be talking about a bit now, I guess, is Flat Earth Blues, and that has been our most collaborative piece by far.
Well, that was what I was going to ask, because obviously you said the collaboration and stuff. So obviously with the new EP, I think again that kind of touches upon, like, from my listening to it, the different influences that kind of you guys may have. That each track kind of has a different feel to it, and I don't know whether it's because, as you mentioned with Spectrum, obviously that was quite kind of not necessarily specific to yourself, but you obviously had a lot of involvement with it. But was it for you personally? Was it a case of kind of letting go and letting the others in?
To an extent, yeah, I had to, because I potentially could have lost them as friends. I don't know whether it was that serious, but there's a certain element of me where there's a lack of theory of mind, so I'm not aware that just because I understand something sometimes, that other people don't see it the way that I do. So I'm aware that this may not be the reality, but there's a potential of, like, the band would just fall apart. They wouldn't want to be my friends because they there's a point of just like, oh, hang on, like, maybe I am being too controlling or whatever. And so this just naturally came about from the process of developing as a band, just becoming closer as individuals. Like, I'm sure you're aware, being in a band is essentially being in a family. In a relationship is like being in a relationship with about, for Human Future, 5 different partners.
Yeah,
polyamory. And it's you people say often, no compromise, and I think the compromise can't. It just has to be within as a unit as such, and what the original intent was. I always want to try and maintain the original intent of Human Future, but I want to do it collaboratively now. I want to get everyone involved in it, and that's essentially where Flat Earth Blues came about. Will, the vocalist, he was more involved in writing lyrics, and one of the songs is actually rather personal to him. All the guitarists were just far more involved. Like I originally wrote the bass lines for Spectrum, and this time I didn't write any parts for Luke. It was again, he's a competent musician. It's not I didn't trust him or anything before. It was written, and I was just like, can you play this sort of thing? And what I like about it is just, I view Human Future as an experimental band a lot, and it was the most experimental process we've had thus far.
And you've kind of touched upon it there, obviously Will having a bit more involvement in the lyrics and things, and kind of going back on Spectrum again, there was kind of almost a running theme. So was it a case with the new EP that you kind of went into it thinking that to kind of continue that ideology of a theme within a record, or is it a case of this is the next step for Human Future, this is the next direction we're going to go in for future recordings and so on and so forth?
I guess there was still a level of controlling in that. I was just like, right, I want to maintain, like, as far as I'm concerned, it's not Human Future if we're not doing the thematic thing. As far as I was concerned, we're going to not stick to the original intent in terms of thematic things based around the future of humanity and just all sorts of things surrounding what that could entail, like what the future of humanity means to you, what the human future is, take it however you want, and just push that further collaboratively. If nobody wanted to do that, as far as I'm concerned, we might as well stop as Human Future, and even if it was just the same people, just start a new band. Be the theme. That's where I think there should be no compromise. If you've got an original vision, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't have to be only you that seeks the answers, to put it in a bit of a tossy way. Like, you can do it as mates. You can do it together. If you don't see eye to eye, though, it can be difficult to do that. And I guess that's the process in any band. And as I've said already, like, in a way, it just comes down to a thing of like, right, why don't we just do a new band then? Like, if you don't want to do that, why don't we just do a new band? That's not a conversation we've had, but you get what I mean.
And obviously, for you guys, obviously from doing Spectrum and now this new EP, and I think you're one of the bands that I haven't had the chance to actually see live yet, but you're one of the bands that I always see your name kind of floating around the UK scene. And
really?
Yeah, I think it's just because we're kind of we're running the same circles, sort of thing.
Right.
So do you hope that, because again, from a listener looking in, I feel that Flat Earth Blues is kind of a progression for you guys. Do you kind of hope that this is going to be kind of a push up onto the next step of the ladder?
Do you mean as in further exposure?
Yeah.
I would love to have further exposure. I think any artist who says who is making something and putting it down in some sort of concrete form, so to say music, a definite form which is you can maybe be able to interpret it differently, but it literally is those sound waves, that paint stroke, that sketch, or whatever it is, those words you put together. Anyone who says they don't want to be seen is, I think, maybe not being honest with themselves or openly just plain deceitful. I would love people to hear my music, because again, I'm essentially still the little kid inside. I want to emulate my heroes, and I want to do all those things. I want to do that, and I also part of me when I was growing up a bit, kind of wanted to be the David Lynch of the music world, writing all these
That's incredible.
Headfuck albums. And I still want to be Ulver, I still want to be Enslaved, I still want to be Akakoka, I still want to be Pink Floyd, I still want to be Can, again, there's still that excitement in me about music, and I hear new things. And I want to be that. I want to do that. And how could that kind of influence be assimilated into my understanding of music thus far? So as far as I can see it, in terms of exposure, I would love to be heard more. And getting up to you said that the EP is a progression for us, Flat Earth Blues. Personally, I'd love it if we did something entirely different. Part of me would love to just do an electronic EP, but I'm
that'd be incredible.
Like, no, that's such a cliche. I think it should be sincere from the person. Like, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's a bit rubbish, really. Like, if you're writing for someone else, it becomes a job. This is a hobby. This is a passion, and so on. And like, it's a very fortunate thing that I feel that I don't think there's anyone insincere that I've met. Or at least, again, maybe it's a bit of a lack of judgment. But I'm so glad by being in this band, I've met so many just incredible people. It's mind blowing. It really humbles you to remember. Like, I was excited to be like hang out with bands and stuff like that, and you meet some people who are just like, wow, like straight away, I'm going to name drop Sammy Irwin. Oh.
That guy he's in too many bands for my liking.
I can't help but see him and like think I'm seeing like a future legend almost, like not maybe like a Lemmy, but that guy has serious.
Don't say that. You'll inflate his ego.
Oh no! Oh god! I don't want to be the I don't want to be the catalyst for Sammy losing it.
In case Sammy listens to this, I love you, Sammy, but
I love Sammy. I love him more. No, but yeah. So you're aware of Sammy, right? Employ to Serve, Regurgitate Life. I'm part of Tree Seeker Music, and if you're not aware, we released Sammy's death metal side project, and Regurgitate Life's second album is amazing. I think it's the best thing he's involved with, frankly. And Renounce isn't quite up my street. Like, it's a bit too kind of just mosh hardcore in a way. Like, it's not terrible. I don't want to make out it's terrible, but it's just not to my taste as such. And just his other involvements, like just all the things he does. Like, he's got some doom band that's apparently in the works, and I just cannot wait to hear that. Joe Clayton as well, No Studios, and Pine, Old Skin, Esoteric Youth. He's another guy who I've met, and I'm just like fascinated by him, just his ability. And we were lucky enough to play with them when we were lucky enough to support Mare in London, and watching them, it's, if you can go see Pine, go see Pine.
Well, again, they're a band that, because weirdly enough, I know Joe a little bit, because when I used to put on shows, I put on Esoteric Youth, so I know Joe through that way. But you kind of touched on it up there. Obviously, you've played with like bands like Pine, and sort of, as I mentioned, like within the UK scene, you're one of those bands that I kind of see dotted about here and there. But I don't mean this to come across in the wrong way, but I mean it as a compliment. You're not kind of pigeonholed, so it's hard for you to kind of, like, I kind of see this with my band. It's kind of hard for you to fit in a certain lineup when you play live. But do you kind of see that as a good thing, that you are different to the other bands on the bill, or do you see it as a challenge that you have to win over a new crowd?
I don't even think of it in those terms.
No, okay,
yeah, no, it's just it is what it is.
No, that's fair enough. I just think prime example is we played like an all-dayer in Brighton recently, and we were by far because the type of music we play is kind of like Locust, sort of Daughters-esque sort of type stuff. But we were playing with kind of like either like moshy bands or like grindcore bands. So there's us and coming with our like Widley guitars and stuff. It's just.
Please tell me you're wearing costumes.
No. But yeah, so like for me, like obviously as the vocalist, I always kind of, I don't know, when I'm in a room where I know that people aren't there to see us, I feel like I need to up my game. But I don't know. Do you see it differently?
this is again where I am aware I likely come off sounding tossy. If you see me, I've probably got my eyes closed. I'm just like, like lost in it and stuff like that. Because it is one of the most cathartic experiences. It's one of the most enjoyable experiences. Playing music you've written. Well, I guess even, like cover bands even like probably get a very similar experience of just playing live, playing loud music live in front of people observing you. I guess there's an element in everyone where they kind of want someone to just be paying attention to what they've done, and I get lost in it a bit. I like feeling hypnotized almost, and you'll find a lot of the things that kind of drive me to create, not necessarily the rest of the band, is just kind of like minimalist sort of things where it's a motif that just develops and just it's hypnotic. You can hear it in songs like Misery Drone with the verse, you can hear it in Cycle, you can hear it in the last song on the current EP. And yeah, I hate, like, again, this is the cliche sort of terms now. It's like meditative, it's a ritual. It's not really a ritual, but like if you understand what I mean, it just kind of, it's probably the closest feeling I get to being spiritual, because I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in supernatural stuff as such. So that is the thing where I guess I feel most alive. I feel most like this is something I love doing. Again, like I love composing, I love writing, I get lost in it, I get hypnotized by it. I don't know whether there's something in your life that you kind of like can just get lost in, and I love that feeling. It's almost like Lovecraftian. You're just like getting lost in the madness.
I wanted to obviously talk to you about is, you've mentioned it again earlier, is obviously your involvement with Truth Seeker Music, and obviously Alex is the other kind of part of that as well.
He's boy number one.
Again, I don't want this to kind of come across in the wrong way, but do you feel like you're kind of, obviously with both of you being in the band?
Also, let me clarify, Phil, the lead guitarist, is also in Truth Seeker Music as well.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah, no, again, like I just mentioned that because yeah, like I'm quick to mention myself and Alex, and then I've left him out in the past, and I felt bad about it. So Phil's in Truth Seeker.
But then that kind of brings me to my point. There's three of you in the band, and obviously your music is on your label, so it's almost a kind of double-headed coin in the fact that it's easy that you've got your label that you can put your music out on, but does that kind of hinder you that people think, oh, well, you're just putting your own music out, sort of thing? Or right. Or are they two completely separate things?
Right. Look at it this way. You know that Illuminati, yeah? The New World Order? We're the new guys in town. We're the Truth Seekers. Literally, like, Truth Seeker, the name came about in part because Alex and I were... Originally, it was just Alex and I who were talking about it. And then Phil, at a later point, like Alex, I think, just essentially was like, oh yeah, I'll just see, like, Phil's really into like the idea of being in a record label, so like, why don't we ask him? I was like, yeah, I love Phil, why not? And we were just kind of throwing names about, one of the first names that we were like, oh, that's the one, Redshift Records or something like that. And then it turns out there was already a Redshift Records. We knew Human Future, the name comes from Pale Blue Dot, the full title, Pale Blue Dot, A Vision of the Human Future in Space. And so we're into sci-fi stuff. I'm obsessed with conspiracy theories. I don't believe them, don't worry, it's just the most intense sci-fi. So it's like David Icke, Alex Jones. It's comedic, terrifying, that they have an influence, and yeah, there's just, it satisfies so many things in me. Truth Seeker literally came about because I was just like, I was thinking to myself, and I think I even said out loud to Alex, like, what sounds like it could be David Icke? What sounds like it could be like a David Icke thing? And I was like, true, like, and it was also, it's again like, what is the intent behind the label? And again, it's a tossy way to summarize the label. We want to seek the truth. We want to find good music, and we want to put out good music, the things that we truly, sincerely believe in. And yeah, when we search the name, or like to see, it's Truth Seeker Records or Truth Seeker Music taken, one of like the first things to come up, David Icke. So it's like, we're sold. Yeah.
But so obviously if we talk about the label a little bit, because obviously I know there's the association with Holy Roar, but I, again, probably people in the UK as well, do view you guys as a separate label because you are, and you have your own identity. Obviously, Human Future being on that label is a prime example. It's not your kind of generic quote-unquote UK DIY hardcore label. Like, obviously you've got yourselves, you've got Howls, you've got Regurgitate Life, who are three completely different bands.
And I love it.
So is that kind of the idea, is, as you kind of mentioned, that you just want to put out music that you believe in rather than creating a label that has an identity with a genre?
No. We're the new Illuminati, we're the new world order. That's it. That's the truth. I love that, because potentially someone's going to listen to this now and actually believe that. It's a conscious decision. I knew, this is the beautiful thing is, I knew when we started Truth Seeker, I wanted to release Howls and another. Well, actually, we've announced it now, so I was about to say, can't say who it is. Yards. I knew I wanted to try and release those guys because they're incredible. Like, why wouldn't you want to? I wanted to release Pine as well, but funnily enough, he got a slightly better offer. Sonance, the second release from the label. Again, another band where I was just like, oh, holy shit, I love this band. Can we I was talking to Alex, like, oh yeah, now I'm talking to Sonance on Twitter, and just like we've now started a back and forth of like, hey, who's releasing your album? Because no one's actually put it out, and so how about we release it, maybe, sort of thing. It's just, I can't even remember what you were saying. Yeah, like, simply put, yeah, it's great to have the label because, again, like, we've got an output to put our music out, and we have no one to answer to but ourselves. It was the kind of, I guess, the reality is, like, rather than feeling like left out in lineups on gigs and stuff like that, we've felt like we've been left out on labels in, well, maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but like,
no, I get what you mean. It's hard to find a label. Yeah,
and like Palm Reader Records, like, Lee really liked us, and it was really flattering that he actually sincerely enjoyed us, and so on. Holy Roar Records, when we had the split put out, for all I know, Alex Fitzpatrick couldn't stand us. I assume he liked it enough to put it out, but like, I have no idea whether he likes the band, nor does it really matter necessarily. So again, like, we don't Mosh Tash helped put out our records, and like, we sent it off to other labels and never got replies or just no interest or whatever. So there's a very limited level of interest in releasing us, so why not do it ourselves? Why not just do what we could do? And so, yeah, again, sorry, I'll expand upon that for the rest of the label. Yeah, it's great to have something that we can do, and then we can only answer to ourselves, and then we can also, maybe not, I get Alex actually is very much into the community side of things. I'm just pretty much just like, I want to put out art that I sincerely believe in, and Alex is essentially, I guess, fostering a community in a way, like a new scene as such, where there's not necessarily such genre limitations. I guess so far all we've released is like collectively heavy, but it's all variants of heavy.
So if I give you kind of like a hypothetical, because as you say, there's the three of you kind of involved in it, so I can't think of a specific band, but say for instance, I don't know, Alex came to you with a band and was like, oh, I really want to put out these guys. You weren't too sure, but Phil was like, yeah, so it's like a 2-on-1 kind of situation. Would that band get the nod, or would does it have to be a consensus on the release?
Yeah, pretty much a consensus on the release. There's also like sometimes the reality of running a label is you sometimes get like bugger all offers, and then like buses, they all come at once, and you're just like, I can't fucking afford to release all of these. Yeah. Like, there's all so good, but like just timing, the situation around the record in terms of how ready it is or who else is involved, it can affect the decision. Because like sometimes if it's like multiple labels already involved in a thing, it's just like, okay, like that's a way that can influence things in terms of like maybe like we should focus on something where we can actually then just if they've already got someone interested and so on, let's focus on another. That's kind of like a thing that directs us, okay, maybe we should focus on the thing that isn't already receiving attention or whatever. Obviously we're going to try and choose the things that we are most into and whatever, but there's just variations. And I would say Alex is numero uno guy, but he likes trying to be run things somewhat democratically, I guess. It's we're not like voting as such, but yeah, we hear each other out, and he's the one doing the majority of the work, so it's we've got to give him some respect, I guess.
Yeah. And kind of going back to Human Future, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a few of you that are kind of like do other projects in other bands. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So how do you kind of work around sort of the different projects to come back to Human Future? Is it a case of just time and place, or does Human Future kind of take a time priority at a certain aspect in time? If that makes sense?
I guess it's still there's a core of the band where, again, pretty much true Seeker music, myself, Alex and Phil, we live relatively close together, so it's easiest for us to meet up and discuss things and so on. So like that would have often been the process where we work together a lot, and then say when it's time to actually we're going to go on a tour, we'll then meet up and practice together. Say if we're working on song ideas where it's actually often we'll have some jams and work out basic ideas, and then it would become back into this lovely little den and
Yeah.
it will be demoed on my Mac, and the songs will be crafted on there. And with Flat Earth Blues, it was a bit more collaborative in that rather than just me focusing on structuring the songs, there was also Alex and Phil coming in, Luke would come in, Will would be helping writing lyrics, and our current lineup, Kurt Phillips, is drummer in multiple things. He was in Paraiso, he was in Artemis, which are no longer, well, they are defunct, but I'm not saying too much, but they're probably coming back. The Phoenix is rising from the flame. And he's a teacher, he is a session drummer as well, so it's essentially his life. So we have to work things around him to a large extent, and it's the unfortunate realities of being in a band in a way. Like, we're a six-piece. That's six people to keep together. It's six people to keep organised and synchronise. So it doesn't always work out. Like, in terms of, by work out, it means we meet up sporadically.
Yeah.
And intermittently. So, like, it's not something where we're, like, doing it week in, week out. And I kind of value that to an extent. It allows you to ponder things, allows you to consider things, rather than, I guess that's one thing, we're not an immediate band.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously being a six-piece, and it's something I wanted to talk to you about, because I think, especially within the UK scene, quote unquote, it's quite a kind of unique thing in a way, especially within the kind of the heavier scene, because I think nowadays, standardly, you're a four-piece, guitar, bass, drum, vocals. Every so often you'll get a three-piece. More and more we're even seeing two pieces. I think we're, like, my band's weird for being a five-piece, so you guys being six is even sort of a stretch further. So obviously you've mentioned kind of previously a lot of the writing was done by yourself and so on and so forth, but how do all the elements kind of come together? Like, is it a case of just sort of working it through, or is it a case of, I don't know, you bring a riff, then someone else brings it on top, and it just layers naturally?
Well, the writing process for Flat Earth Blues is as simple as this. The intro and outro I composed, because again, I knew what I was trying to represent in those things. The first actual song, like with vocals and like, you know, an actual, I guess, a thing that fits the definition of song, that's essentially Phil's idea. Like the majority of the song, like the skeleton, I mean, is stuff that Phil was like, yeah, I'm gonna, and like there was just interaction between the band. Like I remember there was one bit in it, I was like, change that because that sounds like it's literally taking it in the wrong direction. Like it didn't resolve itself. It was like changes to a chord and then coming back to one, and it's just like, oh, that sounds horrible. Like no. So like everyone had their interaction like that, and that was largely a case of like we just figured out each of our parts. And the solo sections, that was something that was worked out when we were recording it, like how long should it go on for. It was essentially Phil spent like a couple of like an hour or two over a couple of days improvising solos, just kind of getting a natural feel for where it should go, and then like we took, I guess, the best take. The second song was an idea that I started, and then Phil was like, I've got a better riff. I was like, go for it. He had the better riff, so we used that. And that's a song where Phil and I kind of, like, I wrote a song, Phil added his parts, and then I created a certain structure, we jammed it out as a band, and then realised, oh, it needs to be contracted, and the rest was essentially added in the studio. The last song, that is from a jam. We record jams on the phone, like iPhones every now and then, and it was just something where Alex usually records it on his phone and then sends it over to me, because I'm the one who's going to be obsessive enough to listen to them enough time to be like, okay, this is the idea, I like this, and like track it out, I guess. And I just found some ideas from a jam we randomly had where Phil just messed around with his effects pedals, created a reverse loop. I was just like, that sounds like Death Spell Omega. Hell yeah, I'm not for that. And I structured a song around his basic ideas, developed it slightly, and then boom, jam. It was a bit of a hard one to jam out because there's polyrhythms, there's just so many layers going on that it's not one you can really perform like competently.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a studio song.
That's cool. Also, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was obviously kind of like going back to being part of like the UK scene and sort of touring and stuff. And obviously you've toured around Europe, toured like the UK and stuff. And obviously with Flat Earth Blues coming out, is there plans to kind of quote unquote promote the EP with tours and things, or is it just a case of when you guys have all got time together to hit the road?
It's yes to both.
Yeah.
There is plans, we would love to. Like, again, it's one of the best feelings you can get. It's like, there's a reason lots of people want to be in bands, because it is sincerely great fun. And yeah, we are going to be doing a brief stint, like a weekender with Pine. That's coming up very soon, actually, like the end of June into July. That's going to be up north, so like I believe we're playing Glasgow, Edinburgh, and I think it's just a place has been announced. It hasn't been announced, so I won't say, but like we've apparently got another show. Beyond that, it's what can we manage, because unfortunately on our current basis now, Sam Ricketts is in Earth Moves, and he's a lovely boy and incredible musician as well. Again, another guy who's just like, wow, that I get to I can call him friend.
Yeah.
It's just like insane. It's wicked because he knows his stuff musically. He's classically trained, so like he's rather competent. And obviously he's got, again, I was aware of bands he was in before I even met him and even got to play with him and become his friend. So it's almost like he wasn't a hero of mine, but like it's like, oh god, like this guy's in a really good band. Oh my god, he likes us too. But yes, he's obviously got his commitments. Kurt's got his commitments. So Will, the vocalist, he works for Aston Martin, I do believe. So he's jet setting it. Yeah, like Yeah. Look, I don't give a shit about cars, so like it's not that impressive for me. But like, obviously, it's impressive. I don't want to like belittle him. It's I just don't give a shit about cars. So like, some people are just like, shit, that's a cushy job. I'm like, I guess it is. So yeah, again, working things around that. We're just gonna have to try what we can. If we can get into Europe again, holy shit, I want to go, because that was an incredible experience.
That's one
Have
thing.
you toured Europe?
No, that's what we were going. We tried
Mate.
to do it this year.
Try even harder.
It just everything, because we were meant to go over with like some friends, but it just didn't plan out. But I ended up going over at the beginning of the year because I had time off from work, and I'm really good friends with Svalbard, so
Wicked people, wicked band.
yeah, so they were really kind enough to just kind of. I literally just messaged Liam. I was like, "Can I jump in your van?" And he was like, "Yeah, why not?" So I got a free holiday out of it. So that was really cool.
Actually, I think our first weekender was with Svalbard, like Svalbard and We Never Learned to Live, I think.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was incredible, because, again, that was a point where, like, the origin of human... I come from, like, black metal generally, avant-garde. I can't say that word properly at all. Doesn't matter. I come from just a weird music. I don't come from punk as such. So like, I was just brought up with weird music. I'm half Polish. I went to like weird gypsy sort of Polish gypsy restaurants where they'd have all this weird fiddle music. So I was introduced to weird stuff like from the get go almost. And yeah, I guess that just coloured my taste in music. And we were touring with Svalbard, just talking to them, I realised that Serena was into a load of black metal that I really liked.
Yeah.
Oh, sick! Someone actually likes black metal. Yeah, woo! And she knew Silencer. I tried to tell her about Weakling. I don't know whether she was particularly interested in me like chatting at her, but yeah, I was like, oh, it was just lovely to. In that instant, realise, oh shit, yeah, like this is a diverse scene, and not everyone is necessarily just into hardcore. They've got their own influences, and some people will have similar influences to me.
Yeah, well, I think you've kind of hit the nail on it. Like, if like my band, like even though I'm screaming whatever, I listen to emo music all the time. Like Sorority Noise and Brand New and stuff are like two of my favourite bands.
This is the thing. I do not understand what is emo anymore. We get called emo, and I was like, no, we're not. But I'm like thinking of like, I guess Parkway Drive or whatever. And apparently that's not necessarily emo. I don't really care anymore. I guess it is emotional music what we do, but oh well.
But yeah, I think as you say, like that's the good thing about the UK scene. Well, parts of the UK scene is obviously how diverse it is, and I think you've got obviously you guys touring with Pine. Obviously, Pine are one of the probably most diverse bands in the scene at the moment, but. Yeah, I think it's a cool time to be a band in the UK at the moment, I think.
Well, yeah, look, I guess I don't think there's there's obviously going to be different movements or scenes that crop up every now and then, and like just with anything, there's cycles that we go through, and just like things build up and peter out, and you just see where it goes. But like, there's always good music. You don't sing. I just don't see why you'd want to close yourself off to outside styles.
Yeah, I get that. What I'm going to do, because I've got to shoot off shortly, so I'll round it up. But basically, the way that I like to end these shows is kind of bring it back to the live aspect of the band, because I think it's easy for bands to quote unquote pick a favourite song or whatever because it's one that's melodic, but I think giving a live experience is different. So what I like to ask is, what is your favourite song that you like to play live?
What, that we've written or anyone's written?
That you've written.
In part, it would be probably just because I know it would be so hard to pull off, and if we pulled it off, I'd love to be able to play None Shall Survive Through the Churn. I think that's the title. Like the last... like the proper, like the bit that goes death metal or like black metal, or whatever you want to call it, at the end of Flat Earth Blues. I'd love it if we could pull that off, just because imagine being able to like, because it's got choral vocals for people who haven't heard it. It's got like weird percussive bits and bobs, like African percussion. Whoa, African percussion, not percussion. But yeah, like it's got so many dense layers, like weird reverses and synths and noise, and if you could actually fully pull that off, that would be such an intense song to see live. But realistically, probably the most fun song to play is maybe actually.
It's hard to say, actually.
All Must Wither is a good one to play, because that's one where you can. All of us have just thinking of it as being in the band. I just really like how the different parts interact with each other, and how like none of us are like all. Oh, actually, wait, yeah. Well, Kurt's playing all the time, but we're constantly kind of coming in and out, and it's very much a kind of a textural piece. So there's moments where it'll be like literally just me playing guitar, and then gradually building up, and then it kicks in, and we go all proper noisy, and it's just really satisfying playing that, because you can go at that point where it kicks in. It's just like break stuff right and go mental. But yeah, so All Must Wither or None Shall Survive Through the Churn, which I think is the title.
That is, you've hit the nail on the head. I looked at you as you were saying it. Perfect. Stephen, thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm sure everyone's going to love the record when they hear it, because I think it's awesome. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Tim.
No worries.
What's your band called again?
It's called The Divorcee.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You? Hey! I'm going to go listen to you again now.
Sick.
Boom. Well, thank you very much, Tim.
No worries, man.
Very nice talking to you.
Cool. Take it easy, dude.
Have a lovely evening.
And you, man. Take it easy.
Peace.
Bye.
Vote Labour.
So there we have it, folks. Thanks again to Stephen for his time. It was a shame that I kind of had to wrap things up, because I was actually shooting out after we recorded, and I didn't really realise what the time was. But I could have spoken to him for ages. He's a really interesting guy. So Stephen, if you're listening, which I hope you are, would love to have you kind of back on for a part 2, and we can kind of talk about other things, how the band's going later on down the line. Also, massive shout out to Sean from Already Heard for hooking this up, as always. The dude's awesome. Has helped me out massively in the last year or so. So please go support that website and everything that Sean does. As mentioned at the top of the show, this is to coincide with the release of Flat Earth Blues by Human Future, which is out now on Truth Seeker Music. So head over to truthseekermusic.com to pick up a copy of the new EP. And as always, you can find the band on various different social media platforms. On Facebook, they're facebook.com/Human Future. Twitter, it's @HumanFutureBand. Instagram, it's Human Future Band, which is all one word. Or you can listen to the band's music over at humanfuture.bandcamp.com. As always, you can follow this show on Twitter at @just_and_insight using the hashtag JAIPod to join in any conversations, or just give us a shout out, give us some abuse. I don't care. Just go wild. I said at the end of the Extreme Rules episode that we put out in our normal Tuesday slot that our next guest would be Let It Die. Obviously, had the surprise episode of today planned, so it's kind of throwing things off. But when we're back to normal next Tuesday, the guest will be Let It Die. So please keep an eye out for that. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on the Just an Insight podcast once again, and I will see you soon.